Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Life Podcast, and I am your host, Dale Satram, and I am with, again, my amazing and incredibly witty co-host.
Hey guys!
Katie Jones.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Good to be here.
It is good to be here. You know, Katie, I got to tell you that I am getting really close to getting some more time off. I know.
No, that's good.
Don't be jealous, but you kind of are.
I am. You can't help it.
Yeah.
But
so,
in a good way, in the best way. Jealous and happy for you.
Yes.
It's much deserved.
Because I am soon to turn 60 years old. 60.
60.
I do not feel 60, but
yeah.
the age says I am. So
you're setting the bar high for
come
us.
on.
Yes.
Yeah, don't get old. Come on, it's just
Mental.
a number. That's right. Come on. You don't have to.
At
least slow it down.
Really quick.
You can slow it down. What?
On the fly. You're almost 60. What is the
Oh,
best?
boy.
What are the things you've learned that in the last 10 years? Because you're obviously someone that really values always growing. You're always trying to be better and more in tune with yourself and God. What do you think have been the biggest changes for you from 50 to 60?
Well, if I could show you a picture, I look exactly the same.
That's why I didn't say, what are the biggest physical changes?
You know, I think that, so it's an observation. The biggest change or biggest thing, I don't know. I think what happens as you get older, though, there is a gravitational pull towards comfort. Now, who doesn't want to be comfortable? But I think it even gets more exaggerated as you get older. And you want more comfort and whatever that means to you, you know, because growth requires effort and it's difficult. And I mean, I guess that's why I probably overuse it, but I say choose your hard.
Yeah,
see, people want a non-hard pathway in life, and there isn't one, okay? There's no such thing. So you just choose your hard. But that means you have to leave comfort. You have to leave the land of comfort sometimes. And I think as people get older, they're unwilling to do that. And so I think leaving what is comfortable, choosing to move out of your comfort zone, moving into risk, moving into challenge, moving into growth, those things keep you younger. They keep you healthier. And I gotta tell you something else. You gotta hang out with people different than you.
Yep.
And so a lot of times as you get older, that means younger.
Yeah.
And then you start hanging out with old people. And I'm telling you, if you're older and you hang out with old people, you're going to get old. Hang out with younger people. Hang out with people decades younger than you. It is good for your mind. It's good so that you see life through their perspective, their lens. It's so good. People stop growing. They start shrinking their world. So as you get older, don't shrink your world, expand it. Keep expanding it. Come on, keep getting out there.
That's good.
So there you go.
I feel like that'll be a clip that'll be shown at your funeral in 40 years.
40. Well, that's true. I'm gonna going to at least 100. Let's go.
But there's so much value even from this generation, like hanging out with people that are older too. There's so much wisdom there. One of my closest friends, Tammy, I learned so much from her and love it. And I learn a lot from you.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think that's great advice.
It is. It should be multi-generational. We shouldn't just focus and hang out with one generation. And I think other cultures understand that, where they value their elders, but they value all the generations. And you see them all hanging out together and sharing life together. Yeah. And I think that's how God intended it. And so, we're so segregated in our Western culture. And that's when I love travel. I love going to different cultures. And usually that's what you see, is you see this connectedness of culture, of generations that we don't have here. And we really miss out on that.
Yeah.
So there you go. We're totally off topic.
No, but it's so valuable. I love that. And
Why is that? I'll tell you why it is.
Yeah,
because
why do you think
Western culture values productivity. We don't value relationships. We value being productive. Yeah. That's the God of this world. You drive and drive and drive and drive and drive for productivity at the expense of what? At the expense of relationships, at the expense of your own heart, at the expense of your own health. This is Western culture.
Speaking of also, because you were saying it gets harder as you get older, do you think that's because you have so much work behind you where you're like, I've earned to be comfortable almost?
I hear that all the time.
I know you don't have that mentality.
No, I hear it all the time.
I wonder if that's why
I think so. I think it's natural to start thinking that way. I've worked really hard. I've earned this. I deserve this.
Yeah.
You know, and to some degree, yes, you can earn certain privileges later in life because you've worked for them. Yes, that's a good thing, but it shouldn't equal. I'm trying to now create a comfortable life where I no longer risk. I'm no longer challenged. I no longer learn. I no longer push myself. That type of mentality will kill you. It makes you, again, it makes you unhealthy in every way. I mean, it just makes you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually unhealthy. So, you know, risk is where the growth happens. Risk is where the good stuff happens in life. So it's not in the comfort zone. You can retreat to the comfort zone. Like I said, I'm going on vacation with my family.
Wow.
I'm turning 60 years old. We are all traveling to Mexico together
So
for the
fun.
very first time. I mean, Lisa and I travel all the time, but now it's grandkids. So our 4 grandkids
Is this the first grandkids trip you guys have taken?
out of the country, absolutely. We've camped. This is the first time I'll be in
didn't
another
know
country
that.
with my 4 grandkids. Oh, and they're like
fun.
they know that, you know, Grandpa and Grandma travel all the time, and they're like,
Yeah.
Papa, I can't wait to swim with you in the ocean. I can't wait to play with you on the beach. No, I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, that's so incredible.
Yeah,
What
so
an awesome legacy.
Great memories.
Oh, love that.
Yeah. So that's where I'll be.
We took my parents they came with us to Hawaii in September, and it was like by far probably our
Yeah.
favorite vacation.
Yeah, traveling together.
so
oh,
fun.
it's good stuff.
Such a treat to
Yeah,
have
if you can do it.
grandparents. Yeah, absolutely. So fun.
And when you can't do it, go camping. I mean, 'cause we used to do that. We couldn't have money. We did all the stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you can start doing bigger things, it's the experiences are more important than the things. Again, Western culture again. We value things. We don't value experiences. Other cultures value experiences. They don't value things. Things things can always be taken from you. Nobody can take an experience from you. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of your family culture. See, it can never be taken.
Oh, PD,
Anyway, sorry.
you're getting on this tangent that I'm on too. I'm reading this book called The Household Habits,
Okay.
and it's all about how your habits become you. And right from the time you wake up, you have an unintentional habit. It could be you check news on your phone. It could be you check, but that habit, what you're doing is saying like, oh, if you get on social media, that habit is telling your brain, oh, I need to see what other people are doing before I start my day.
Sure.
Or, you know, just any habit. So
yep.
even just these experiences we're talking about doesn't necessarily, I mean, vacations are great, but what do you have a habit of eating dinner together? Do you have a habit
Absolutely.
of praying together?
Absolutely.
These habits make your family culture. So anyways, we could do a whole other
I know.
episode on that.
And you go,
we're off topic,
and then you go, well, that's really hard. Yes, but choose your hard.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to let, otherwise, culture dictates your family culture.
Absolutely.
And then you
fight
wake up and you're
against
going, I don't like this. Well, that's pretty hard too.
that. Yeah.
So you just got to choose your hard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'd rather be intentional with my hard and go, you know what, I'm choosing the life I want. I'm choosing the relationships. I'm choosing this culture. I'm not going to be a victim to this nuts world we live in.
Yep. It's a choice.
It is a choice. And it's, you know, men and women need to take back their choices. We've given them away. So don't give your choices away. That's the power we have.
Right here.
Yeah.
Screen slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty.
Well,
and I'm
that's-
still actively working on it for sure.
Mine's out of the camera shot,
Yeah.
but it's still over there. Okay.
But anyways, okay,
We're not talking about any of that today, are we?
We're going to have to do an episode on
Yeah.
this stuff because it is so great. But okay, we are going to answer a question from one of our beloved listeners.
Beloved.
Beloved.
You're all beloved listeners.
Yes, thank you for the question.
Even the ones that disagree with us. You're still a beloved listener. Thank you.
And we probably will be doing an episode on one of those soon. So
How fun is that?
Hey, we're not scared of the tension. We
live-
wrestle with the tension.
We live in the tension right here.
By PD. We live in the tension.
We live in the tension.
Hey, but no, seriously, we were talking about that before we started.
Yep.
There's so much value in showing both sides and seeing where the Bible falls. You know, like there's always two sides to everything, but then there's the Bible. What's that quote? There's three truths, like your truth, my truth, and then the truth.
Yeah, the truth, yeah.
So we kind of try to live in that. So.
And then the tension is trying to take the truth and then trying to apply it in our messy world.
Yep.
And sometimes that creates the tension.
Right.
We might all agree on the truth, but then what do you do with it? Anyway. So
this was the longest intro ever. But
Ever?
If this is your first time listening, welcome to the Real Life
we don't
Podcast.
normally do this.
Yeah, we
But-
got a little sidetracked.
But this was kind of good, wasn't it?
Yeah. You're in the room with us.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
in a conversation with us. But you are welcome here, whether you have, maybe you're a baby in your spiritual journey, or you're just curious about faith and what that even means, or you've been around for years. This is the place for you to just come, bring great questions, bring topics. We love to answer your questions. And we also have another segment we're adding in weekly where we are talking about world events and current issues that people are buzzing about, just so we can apply the
Did that
Bible.
last week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go back and watch that one.
Yep, feel a little spicy. But anyways, okay, to your question. So here is our question. My kindergartner got a BB gun for Christmas last year. Loved shooting the first time. I own guns and I have kids. I have a gun safe. I do not store 100% of my firearms in it, unloaded with the action locked, open with a cable lock. I don't know what any of that means.
I know.
Okay, but
I know what it all means. Yeah.
That's why you're here. That is ridiculous. When the boogeyman kicks the front door down, I can't say, "Pardon me, good sir," while I arrange my affairs to be in proper order. What's your take on gun safety? So I'm imagining this is for you. So you let us know what.
Oh, really? Why don't you have an opinion?
Yeah, but I like to hear yours. I like to hear yours. But we also, just so you know, before you shut us off and are like, oh, they're just, Malala gun happy people, we have a list of Christian arguments for gun rights and a list of Christian arguments against gun rights, and both use verses. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But off the bat, what's your take on gun safety?
Hey, listen, this is it's a great topic, really. It is. I realize it can be controversial, but listen, gun culture and gun safety and people's experiences with guns has morphed and changed, Katie, so much over the years.
Totally.
And so I think it's difficult. We talked about the value of generations. Here, just in our intro, we were talking about unrelated things.
Right.
But I'm going to just connect some dots here with that, because I think sometimes people that are younger, they don't understand, because just because of you're younger, you haven't seen culture morph. So just by an example of how different culture has changed. Now, I'm going to be telling stories about me being, it was a long time ago, okay? Yeah, you weren't born yet, okay? So, yeah. So when I was in high school, 100 years ago,
Spill the tea.
just to show you how different culture was. So I'm 15 years old, and so I think it was a sophomore English class, and we had to do demonstration speeches. And so, 45 years ago, let's just say what it is, 45 years ago, what was my demonstration speech going to be on? So I grew up with guns.
Right.
I mean, I grew up with all kinds of guns and doing things. So my demonstration speech was literally taking a gun to school.
Wow.
And cleaning it in class. Now,
Okay, it's a good demonstration.
right.
Gotta learn how to do
But
it.
it's not like my parents took me to school
Right.
and I checked it into the office. I took a shotgun on the bus.
Nobody thought twice.
No,
about it.
I took it into the school,
Right.
walked it down the hallway, kids everywhere. Oh, cool, you got a gun. Yeah, what are you doing? Demonstration speech. I'm going to, brought it into class. I mean, I know that's unheard of today.
Right.
I get it. It would not be appropriate today. But I'm showing you how culture has shifted and changed so much. Back when we were in school, we did not associate guns with violence at all. There was just no association with it. Guns were recreational. We all grew up with guns. We were rural kids.
There was no video games back then, right?
Yeah, Katie, you're funny. You're kind of funny. No, Katie, there were no video games, okay?
Okay,
yeah.
well, that's an important piece. It wasn't meant as an insult. It was meant as that. I do think that those.
I am that old, Katie, yes.
We're stuck on it.
We are stuck. I'm just laughing, sorry.
No, okay, so no video games with gun violence yet. It was recreational. I'm painting the picture for those of us that
are a little younger, yeah, okay.
Right, yep.
Did not exist. The phones didn't exist. No, we didn't have those influences. No, it's true.
Okay.
So again, there was literally no
What
association.
about shows? shows back then were
Yeah, but there were
westerns, country westerns.
Of course, there were westerns and,
Right.
and there were cop shows and there were things
Sure.
like that had guns in them. But for some reason, again,
They
they're
weren't
just
as gory.
they weren't as
either.
gory.
Right,
But
okay.
even as a kid, those are shows. This is
Yeah.
entertainment. It's TV. It's this. So. I don't know. There was not an association with violence. I got off the bus almost every day and grabbed my gun and went outside and came home for dinner.
Yeah.
And what was I shooting? Well, you would shoot ducks and pheasants and quail. And you would eat them.
Was
You would.
there
It was.
accidents, like gun accidents that people buzzing about at that time, or were kids really trained on like, hey, this is how you use them? The education around it.
I think that was there education? Yes. Was there hunter safety? Yes. I think that and this I think this might come up in some of the questions. Gun safety. I've always been a proponent of get your kids exposed to guns early. Why? Because you remove the mystique. You remove the temptation. You remove, if you create something that is the forbidden fruit, I don't care what it is. If you create forbidden fruit, okay, what's going to happen? You almost make it something that is almost unbearable to not do. So get out in front of it and remove the mystery. So take your kids, expose them to guns, let them shoot, teach them safety. I mean, that's the best thing that you can do. And now all of a sudden, they're not sneaking into your bedroom, grabbing your parents' gun because you never let them. They understand. They know. There's rules. There's how we do things. You've taught them to respect what this thing is. And I mean, so all of that's part of this culture that you create. So I know back to this. I know it has swung so far to the other side.
It's too bad we couldn't do a timeline almost, because in such a short, okay, yeah, sure, 45 years, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not that long for it
No.
to have pendulum swung so far
Right.
to where.
And I know it's different between rural and urban, and I
Sure.
get that, but still.
I can't help but think, like when I think of the original, I believe, wasn't it Eugene was one of the first like school shooters? I can't remember, Kipper.
I know.
Oh, what the heck? Okay, someone will know who I'm talking about.
They will.
But that was one of the first ones I remember hearing about, whether it be later. I think it was in the 90s. But, like, you have to look at, like, what's happening in culture around these times where things, and it's like there was a ton of bullying, but also, like, is that about the time where, like, both parents had to start working? There wasn't as much, like, parental, the bullying started to become a little different. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but I feel
I
like
don't know. I think that the bullying changed with. It's always been there.
Sure. Yeah, and it always will be.
I think it became different with the creation of smartphones. Because now all of a sudden, if you got bullied in high school, and when I was, and I'm not justifying anything,
Right.
but everybody received some form of it.
Yep.
To some degree.
Absolutely.
And but it was, it wasn't in front of 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, this bullying is online, and the shaming is like it's next level.
Right.
So it's it's digital. It's a different it's a different world. And I know some people would argue, well, that was your world, and that world doesn't exist anymore. Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, that world doesn't exist, and therefore, because that world doesn't exist, do we need to have different rules and take away guns? And so, okay, that's a legitimate argument.
Also, I'd want to point out, God was in schools when you were growing up, correct? Or was that past that? It was, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
What was it?
Well, you're like, I'm not sure my school had a lot
My
but
point being,
we had freedom. We did have more freedom to talk about God, to bring God into those environments. We weren't told you couldn't. That's absolutely true.
this is just, I know this is so multifaceted. I'm not blaming all of this on, the separation of church and state, nothing like that. But also, I feel like discipline in the classrooms you can't do it anymore. Now it's like, oh, we have to let them get away with this. It's not an option to discipline and do the.
Katie, when I was in the grade school, you could still get spanked.
Oh, that's so crazy.
No,
too.
seriously.
I'm not advocating
I don't
for
advocate that
spanking in
either.
school.
But I'm just telling you, cultural differences. Oh my gosh. And you got in trouble.
Consequences and actions. And, I think like we have as a culture, I think it's a really good thing to try to understand individuals' motives. I get why we do that. I get why psychology is important. But I also feel like you're not doing people any favors when there's no consequence for the actions, especially kids. Like, it's a valuable lesson to know that if you do this, there's going to be a consequence, and we want the consequence to be less now than have you go out in the real world and experience, a much harsher consequence. So it's just, I know this is so multifaceted. We could go so many ways with this, but
I do want to point out something.
yeah.
I never got spanked by the principal. I talked my way out of it every time. I talked my way out of it every time. We were on a pretty close first name basis. Sorry.
Well, before you do that, did you think about this? We're going to need to hear some of those.
Stories?
Yeah, we're going to need to hear some of those. We need the receipts.
Never.
But anyway, so this person's asking about gun safety. You're definitely giving like a good picture of like what you grew up with historically.
Well, so gun safety, again, I think that, doesn't Oregon have a law that says you have to have them locked up? Isn't there something? I mean, I think there is. And
I understand what he's saying, though.
So, the majority of people that I know, for his argument is simply, if I have a gun that is in my home, I have it there for safety reasons, and then it's legally locked up. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help me very much if somebody kicks down my front door and I need to protect my family and my gun's locked up. So how is that helpful? Mm-hmm. So I understand the argument, okay?
Yeah.
And so, you know what? You can say, well, the law says, and that's fine. If you're not going to do that, then I sort of think gun safety then is about education. Mm-hmm. It is about removing the mystery. It is about making sure your kids understand,
and
the
even then
seriousness.
You're taking a risk.
Well,
But
you're right. It's always a risk.
risk.
I think that maybe it was because we had girls, but my girls were exposed to guns early on. It was normal. They had BB guns, and we went out shooting. They knew Dad shot. They knew where the guns were. Mm-hmm. My grandsons. Again, not just, I got 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons, but it's you just remove the mystery as much as you can. So that's not a perfect system. I get it. Kids are kids and whatnot. So you still have to think about where you're putting the gun and consequences for kids being in places of your house where they shouldn't be. And I still believe, hey, if there's stuff in mom and dad's bedroom, maybe your kids just never have access to certain things. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's still. Did you let your kids go through all your drawers?
No.
No,
and we
okay,
this guy, so we recently did this because we have a safe as well, but Jared recently got a pistol for the same exact reason. Like, if someone breaks in, like, I want to be able, and it's in a drawer that, like, the kids can't reach, but we can reach, and it's not loaded, but the stuff is there to load it, pretty quickly.
Right.
Do I know? I need to take a gun class. It's been on my to-do list because I'm very much, pro guns. But anyways, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. We had the talk with the kids. Dawson is 2, so we got to be really careful. Just
absolutely.
The ages I think are a big deal. But he's gone shooting with us. We had the little earmuffs and things like that. But
then you could even make a gun available, but it's not loaded, so your kids don't know how to load it, or they're not strong enough to load it. They're not strong enough to pull the breech back and put a shell in there, okay?
Yep.
And then when they are old enough to do that, maybe you have a different rules, or by that time they're shooting with you.
Right.
They get it. They understand that. I mean, the education grows with their age. So, and it's an individual choice too. I mean, everybody's choice here might be a little bit different. And so, again, let's not judge each other with some of this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, everybody has a reason why they've come to the conclusion that they have.
Sure.
But I just also in Oregon, I have been told by someone that works very closely in the Capitol, like, if you shoot someone, you probably should kill them. Otherwise, like, they're going to come back and sue you and they will win. So
well there's no doubt about that.
We are not.
If you take a concealed carry class, this is very educational. which everyone who really, if you're going to carry a gun or you have a gun because you're using it for protection, you should all take a concealed carry class.
Yeah.
You should know.
Absolutely.
You should understand the reasons. You should understand the ramifications. Because I'm telling you, if you, especially concealed carry, you pull a gun on someone, even for all the right reasons, your life is probably altered forever.
Yeah. Yep.
I doesn't mean you're going to go to jail, but it's
There's
like
a really good chance.
it's
in Oregon.
serious stuff, and so you just need to know that.
Yeah.
But again, I'm still an advocate for people having the freedom to do that, and you have a right to protect your family and yourself. And but in saying that, does Scripture give us that right?
Yeah, let's get.
Let's
into
talk
those
about
arguments.
that.
Absolutely, really quick. I'm just chatty Cathy.
Oh,
This makes me think. I had a friend who, she did have her home broken into, and actually right here in Malala, and was held captive with her daughter. It was a stalker. He found out that her husband worked nights, kept her.
that's scary.
And she, she's this amazing lady, and she's done a ton of work. I mean, went to therapy, and even I remember this was years ago, having a conversation with her, and I asked her about gun stuff. And even then, she still kind of said, like, I don't know if I'd be okay with taking someone's life. And I just really respected that, a lot of these people that are very, let's just say, anti-gun,
Yeah.
I think it comes from this place of, like, they don't take it lightly, and that's a good way to be, and pro-gun people aren't just, let's just have them to hurt people. It's not, nobody, I think, has bad intentions.
No.
With this, other than criminals that obviously are out
Right.
there to hurt people. But there's good arguments for both. So I just want to throw that out there before we get
Way to
into
be a
it.
peacemaker, Katie.
I'm trying.
Good job.
I'm
I'll create the
trying to-
tension. You create the peace. How's
I'm
that?
trying to throw the olive leaf for those of you out there that don't agree with me that are wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Ouch!
Totally joking. But
Okay.
let's go over the arguments for gun control first, since
All right.
we've kind of given our spiel, and then we'll go over the ones for it. So number one, Jesus teaching on peace. This was Matthew 5, verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers. And then Matthew 26, verse 52 was another verse that says, all who draw the sword will die by the sword. So let's unpack that one a little bit. What do you think?
Well, Jesus is talking about being a peacemaker.
Yep.
True. So does being a peacemaker mean that you don't have a right to defend yourself? So, I mean, I think that's, sometimes we take these scriptures and, so here we said this earlier. We may all agree on the scripture. We may not all agree on the application. And so does being a peacemaker mean that if somebody wants to harm my family, I stand by and do nothing? Is that really what Jesus is asking me to do? Is he asking me to let somebody rape my wife as I stand there and watch it happen, and I have the power to stop it? So what is that? See? So I think I know it's as an extreme example, but I think sometimes that's where you have to flesh these arguments out all the way. We all want peace. We all should work for peace. We all should strive for peace. But we live in the real world. So here now we're going to embrace the tension. This is the Real Life Podcast.
Right.
Okay? I'm a peacemaker, but somebody comes in who's violent. And now you're faced with this dilemma of what does it mean to be a peacemaker? Sure. What does it mean for a husband who is a provider and a protector? So do I lay aside that responsibility for the sake of being a peacemaker? Sometimes, Katie, we are faced with, it's not contradictions, but we are faced with situations as followers of Jesus where it almost feels like we have two competing values at the same time. And I think we've talked about that here before. And people want to remove the tension, and you can't. So you can't remove the tension. You try to make everything a black and white issue. It's binary thinking. We've talked about that plenty of times. Binary thinking and trying to apply these things doesn't work. Yeah. The Jews understood that sometimes there were sometimes two biblical principles that would not really compete, but you could do either one of them. They would always say, you choose the higher one. You choose the higher one. So they would say that protecting life is a higher value.
Right.
And so therefore, if I am protecting the life of my family, I'm protecting my life, that's a higher value than all of a sudden I'm going to be a peacemaker and it might kill me. So that's how they would they would try to figure out how do you make these choices.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of nitty gritty.
Well, sure it is. Jesus says, all who draw the sword will die by the sword. I had to look at what translation is used here, because how I remember it being is, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Well, that's a little bit different.
Oh, that would make a big difference.
Well, yeah, it's not just you draw the sword. If you live by it, this is how you live. This is a value, violence, and I live by it. You're going to die by it. Well, yeah, okay. So that makes sense. You're going to reap what you sow.
Right.
And yet, is that really a verse that we can apply to self-defense?
Yeah, that's a great point. I also think there's kind of this not all pro-gun control people are this way, but a lot of them take away the guns, take away the problems. But it's like you do realize that if it's not guns, it's going to be something else, which we'll go over statistics at the end of the episode as well. That'll be helpful. But I think a lot of people sometimes just think, oh, it's just the problem is the guns, which we can get into that in a little bit. But the second argument for gun control that Christians have is faith over firearms. Psalm 20, verse 7 says, "Some trust in horses and chariots, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God."
As they rode out to battle, they sang that. I mean, so, it's so easy to grab a verse. Look what it says. As they rode out to, understand the context. Understand, here David is writing this, and yes, we trust in God, even though we have an army, and we have horses, and we have chariots, and we have bows, and spears, and shields, and ancient history was violent.
Right.
Okay, but even though we have all these things, at the end of the day, we trust God. That's really the context of that verse, so it's really difficult to even apply that to our conversation, because I don't think it has anything to do with that. And I think it's a misapplication, because now it's like, I'm just going to trust Jesus and not, excuse me, you have responsibilities. So I don't get to be foolish.
So if they say, I'm not going to live in fear, the only reason I would need a gun is for self preservation. What if somebody like that? I'm not going to get a gun because
God's going to protect me?
God's going to protect me. Yeah, that.
I'm not going to get a gun because God's going to protect me, and then he doesn't. Don't we have example after example after example of good people who get killed, good people get murdered, good people get raped, good people get really? So what? Just because I say I'm trusting God is some blanket statement, therefore God owes it to you to protect you? Really? That doesn't play out in real life. Sorry, real life podcast. If that is your mentality, that is a theology that does not play out in real life. I'm sorry. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Lord, you protect me, and then nothing bad happens to you. That's ridiculous.
Same mindset with medical stuff. There are
it's the same thing, Katie. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to go to a doctor because God's going to heal me, and then you die.
Mm-hmm.
I just...
Yeah. Okay. We'll skip to the next one.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. That got me riled up.
Love thy neighbor. Romans 13, verse 20 says, love does no harm to a neighbor.
Right, but if somebody breaking into your house, that's not a neighbor. That's an enemy. It's different. Love doesn't do any harm to a neighbor, but somebody breaking into your house, somebody trying to harm you, trying to harm your family, that's not a neighbor. That is an enemy. Now, Jesus says, love your enemies. I get it, and we're gonna differentiate this here in a little bit. But there is plenty of examples, where there's enemies in the Bible, and they're treated kind of harshly. David talks about his enemies. David talks about, David said some harsh things about enemies. And so, that's the Old Testament. Well, I don't care. We've got both. You got an Old Testament and a New Testament, and you got to figure out how they kind of go together. I realize that some of the stuff in the Old Testament doesn't apply now, but when you need to look at how Scripture deals with enemies, and do I have an obligation to live in a certain way towards enemies? Yes, I know Jesus said, "Love your enemy," but understand the context. Understand the context of the Sermon on the Mount. Who is Jesus talking to? Now we got to talk about Rome and their occupation and what is an enemy, and on and on and on. Okay. Someone's breaking into your house. Do you owe them the truth? Really, I want to know where all your money's at. I want to know where your family's at. You gonna tell them the truth? I wouldn't. Well, then you're lying. So, competing value. Protect my family is more important than me telling the truth.
Yeah, and you and me keep going back to the someone breaking in, someone's going to hurt you. But I think a lot of people that are on this particular side are thinking of all the school shootings, and they're thinking of this like, well, does my gun rights, is it more important than children's lives? I've seen that. I've seen
No,
people
I
think
get it.
that way.
And that's where, before we're done, you're going to share data on, well, let's take away all the guns. And the difficulty with some of these arguments is they're emotional. They're not really based on a lot of data. They say they are, but they're emotional arguments, and I get it. These are emotional issues. School shootings are horrible, horrible, horrible. I mean, it's beyond, it's unimaginable, okay?
Yeah.
Unimaginable.
Yep.
So our hearts want to fix this, and that's the dilemma, is that you can't, because the problem is not the mode, whether it's a gun or a bomb or a car or a knife. That's not the problem. The problem is the heart of mankind. That's the real problem, and we can't fix that. See, which is the dilemma. And I know I'm jumping to something, but it's just that's the problem.
Important, and that's definitely related.
So,
because another thing I always wonder is, like, we've had enough of these to where, why don't we hire a police officer or a veteran that is there to, we have the budget, we spend money on a lot of other things, which I know I'm getting into our arguments now, but like for me, when it comes to protecting children, absolutely, why aren't we pulling out all the stops? But you do realize that the majority of these school shooters, it was a stolen gun. Or it wasn't this they didn't go through the proper process. They took their parents' gun. So there's just a lot of like nuances that people don't.
And should
like
we
to
be
focus
focusing on getting rid of guns, or should we be focusing on how do we increase safety?
Yeah.
We live in a violent world. Let's focus on what safety looks like, because you'll never get rid of all the guns in the U.S. It will never happen. It is part of the culture of the United States.
Right.
Until you can change the culture, you'll never get rid of the guns. And so that's like a hurdle that you're not going to get over. I was at a meeting a few years ago with at a local high school, and we were they brought in a special person from back east, and to talk about school issues and whatnot, and it was open to some community leaders, and school safety came up, and it's fascinating. I says, are we really concerned about school safety or not? Because I walked into your building, nobody checked. I walked straight through, and
You said this?
yeah, yeah, straight
that.
through, and I says and I'm fine with that. It's rural, I get it, but and then you want to talk about shootings and safety, and we have offered. There's people in the community who have offered multiple times that they're trained, they're former police officers, they're ex-military, they've been trained for concealed carry, they're trained security. Their parents, they've all said that they would be here to increase security, and we're turned down every time. So, what are we really talking about? Yeah, I said that in front of everybody.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love
Well, that's
that.
really good input. Yeah. We'll see where it goes. So,
I know where it went.
it won't, anyway.
Okay, so the last two that I'll just mention for gun control is, they say early Christians, including apostles, they refer to them as pacifists, that didn't use violence. And then the last one, which I think we kind of talked about, is weapons are used for harm, not protection. But that's not a fact. That's more of
It's an emotional argument, because
emotional.
we could start pulling data and say yes it is, no it's not. It's that kind of silly.
Yeah. So,
Let's talk about pacifists.
Yeah.
Now, let's again. Context is everything. Context is everything. So, what were the Christians being persecuted for? Okay, every one of the disciples were martyrs. Okay, but these are like two different issues. They were being persecuted for being believers. They're being persecuted for being Christians. They're being persecuted for being followers of Jesus. So now, in some ways, this I don't want to say changes some of the rules, but Christians have been persecuted since the beginning of time, and so when we're persecuted for the cause of Christ, we are commanded to do nothing. But if you're just going to break into my house and just because you're a violent person, I'll do everything in my power to stop you. But being persecuted for the cause of Christ, that's kind of a different issue. And again, there is history, and I mean, we're pacifists. I don't know. Let's just, does that mean you never do anything against the government? You don't you try to, protect yourself? I mean, there's a lot of issues. Christians have, they hid, they created catacombs. On, okay? So, but they didn't create an army. They didn't create an army and try to overthrow Rome. That's true. So, I would wrestle far more with being persecuted for Christ. I probably would, if the government came after you, you would be more in a running and hiding than fighting back mode, because that's pretty much the biblical model. So they're not wrong in that regard. But we are talking about the reason for the violence. The reason for the violence is because we're Christians. To die for the cause of Christ, no one's signing up for that. But there's more of a biblical model. But again, if someone's coming after my grandkids, pity the fool, all right? Because it ain't for the cause of Christ, okay?
Right.
But I can arrange a meeting if you need to go see Jesus, okay? Because I will protect my grandkids or anybody else and my family. So
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It made me think of that. Did you ever watch that movie Hacksaw? I think it's Hacksaw Ridge. It's with this. It was, I want to say during World War II, but it was a pacifist. He's like, I really want to help. I don't believe in guns,
right.
but he went and so I'm like, you know what? If you're super convicted on not owning one, that's between you and God.
Well, right, and can't we not judge each other? It's okay.
Right.
Guns aren't right for you. Guns are right for me. Just like Paul says.
Yeah.
Paul talks about these issues of conscience, and he talks about stop condemning each other.
Yeah.
I'm going to preach on that this Sunday, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Because this Sunday is about how do we accept people different than us?
That's an important one.
Yeah, kind of.
For all of us.
Yeah, for all of us. And so, I mean, here's a great example. It's like some people, no, guns aren't okay for me. Well, then, Lord bless you.
Yeah.
That's okay.
A great movie. You should watch it. But he still believed in the cause, though. He was like, yeah, we need to go fight for this. I'll go as a medical person, and he ended up saving.
Right.
It's a true story. He saved his whole platoon's life at one point because they all were wounded, and he was It was a cool story. But I think personal conviction is something different. We're kind of more focusing on laws and what are
right. Yeah, but I think that sometimes we want to take our personal convictions and we want to force them on everyone.
Yes.
We need to be careful with that. Again, as followers of Jesus, we are going to have a lot of different personal convictions, and we should not condemn each other for having different ones. Owning a gun, not owning a gun, is not a moral issue. Stop making differences. This is one of my points on Sunday. Stop making differences a moral issue. Stop it. Because when I can make it a moral issue, that means I can judge you. I can withdraw from you. I can not like you. See, make it a moral issue, and all of a sudden we feel morally superior, and that is the flesh. That has nothing to do with Jesus.
Yeah.
Just nothing whatsoever.
So good. I need to hear
You
that.
have that conviction. You want to own guns. You don't want to own guns. And let it go. Just let it go. Sorry.
Yeah. Stay tuned for Sunday. It'll be a good one.
This is going to be
a
good.
hard hitter.
It is going to be good.
Okay. Well,
all right.
We kind of already got into a lot of ours, so we can just skip over if we have already talked about this. But we talked about, so these are the arguments that Christians have for gun rights. We've already talked about right to self-defense. And one of the verses that people use for that is, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. That could be out of context as well.
Totally, but that's okay.
It's okay now that it's on this.
You're right. You know what? Both sides take scriptures out of context to support their.
Yeah, because I have a feeling I don't think that's what he was talking about here. But anyways, God-given rights and freedoms, American constitutional rights to protect their families and communities. This is another one. Number 3, protecting the innocent. Proverbs 24, verse 11, rescue those being led away to death.
I do like that verse. I know it's a fascinating verse. It's the only one like it in Scripture, basically. I mean, so You need to be careful not to build an entire theology on one verse, but
Right.
that verse was actually used against some of the cities that were around Auschwitz and some of the other places in World War II, where it's like, you guys knew what was going on. You did nothing. Go rescue the innocent. So, I mean, so some people have used that with abortion. They've used that with others. But I do think that there is something that God, it's worth a broader discussion. That if you have the ability to help somebody and you choose not to, I don't think God looks at that very well. So,
Yeah.
apply that how you may.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, distrust of government. Historical instances where disarmament led to persecution of religious groups. That's another reason Christians say that they should have guns. 5, guns are not the problem, sin is, which we have talked about.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And then the last one is biblical examples of armed defense was kind of David. The Nehemiah 4:17-18 they talk about.
Yeah, and there's plenty of Old Testament examples of that, of course. And then people go, well, that's the Old Testament, and then we have the New Testament, and it's all peace and love and this and whatnot. And so you just really got to take the Bible as a whole, figure out what things from the Old Testament move to the New Testament, and which things don't, because not everything does. So they are controversial issues at times. That's why we bless each other for having different perspectives.
Right, and learn. We can learn from
Well,
others on why they got to where they're at with their beliefs. And
Yeah.
okay, so we'll end with stats, just some things to think about. And I'll post where we got these in our show notes, but 1% of all gun violence is mass shootings. And then this one, so this is talking about America. Guns are leading cause of death among America. This is the one they love to bring in.
I know,
Cause of death among American children and teenagers. My question was, how many are suicides?
Majority.
Because if I remember correctly, now someone could correct me on this, I thought suicide was the leading cause right now, which is terrible. But it obviously goes with a gun a lot of times.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to bring in was because people say, well, Sweden or Canada or all these places. So this is from the nypost.com. Reports Sweden's rising gun violence despite having strict gun control measures, including a recent school shooting resulting in 10 fatalities. Norway, France, Germany, and Finland have also experienced mass shootings, indicating that strict gun laws do not prevent tragedies. And then the fascinating one, so this is from publicsafety.gc.ca, so Canada, known for its rigorous gun control policies, reported a violent crime rate more than double of U.S. So just very interesting stats that don't always get, the light shown on them. So, because that's what I always go back to. I'm like, if it's not going to be a gun, it's going to be something else.
And it's just difficult to take the emotions out of some of these highly emotional issues. But at the end of the day, we have to try to, because school shootings are,
terrible.
Well, yeah, there's so much emotion
Yeah.
that is with that, or any type of mass shooting. But at the end of the day, let's look at the data. Let's look at what's really going on. Let's look at other countries. And again, at the end of the day, is it really the gun, or can we just actually find some common ground to actually improve safety? Let's improve safety. And without taking people's freedoms away, it's the U.S. We have the Second Amendment. It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we're just fighting a battle that's never going to be won. And so maybe instead, let's fight a battle we can win. How do we make society safer? How do we make our schools safer? And I think that there's legitimate ways to do that. If we could all come to the table and stop fighting over guns, and let's come to the table and let's really focus on safety.
Right.
Focus on safety, because I think that's what everybody wants. I mean, there's the common ground.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
isn't that being a peacemaker, finding common ground? So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look at you. Well, I don't have anything else unless you do.
Yeah, well, we've been We probably should give our listeners a break.
I know. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Absolutely.
It was so much fun.
Keep sending your questions in, though. We love the questions.
Absolutely. You guys are part of this project with us. We want to wrestle with the tension in the real messy life and find where God and His Word fits into it, because it fits everywhere. We just have to be able to talk about it and find it. And there's no dumb question. There's nothing too taboo for the Real Life Podcast.
No
so
way.
send them in. Send us a message on Instagram at Hi Real Life Podcast, or you can also text us at 503-829-5101. And please keep sharing. We are at about 300 total listeners, which is awesome, but we have a goal of 1,000.
Let's get 1,000. Help us.
Yeah, so if you got value, please share it with a friend.
Yeah.
Share it to your social media accounts. That helps us. And you're part of the movement. So thank you for joining us and hanging out with us.
Okay, thank you. See you next week.